All right, Will. A player of mine's got in touch about some social distancing hockey stuff, and I know that you've just woken up. And have you had coffee yet?
It's here. I had to prioritise the guinea pigs getting food before me, so
Okay.
Servant leadership, that is.
Social distancing games and advice for her as a new young coach. So I'm going to give us 15 minutes, and we're going to just do this off the cuff, and we'll see how it comes out, and hopefully it's of benefit.
Yeah, well, I've taken a lot of feedback on board, and I've got myself some new magnets. So hopefully people will be able to see whatever I put on the board this time. I think this is, yeah, it will help. I think this is an interesting one, really, because people have been putting loads of stuff online. And
ironically, Will, you've started before I've started the clock, and that's the first time ever. So I'm going to start a 15-minute clock, and we're going to be done after that. All right? Go.
Yeah, okay, so I think it's an interesting one, really, because a lot of coaches' natural inclination, and there's loads of stuff that people are putting online at the moment about social distancing stuff, is to revert to type, which is to go back and do isolated block practice. And that's fine, but I still believe that is most beneficial when it is autonomous and when the players are deciding that's something they want to work on and refining it themselves and working on it in their own time, off their own bat. The challenge is, how can we make, if we believe in perception and action being coupled, and we believe in...
That's a minute, Will. Come on.
Yeah, believe in variability, then we've got to try and do these things in games, which makes it very, very challenging. That was my point.
I agree. A few thoughts on my point of view is they haven't been on the pitch for absolutely ages. So actually giving them some freedom and allowing them to go and just hit a ball at a goal and play and ask them what they want and letting them shape and guide it is good. So, and I think that would be good for your practice as a younger coach, and for other coaches, is to actually allow them to shape and guide it, and then test yourself to think on the spot and come up with some bits and pieces of how you can actually facilitate that and just add detail to that. So it might be that you just chuck in a few little technical points as they get going, but can you stand back and watch as opposed to being the centre of attention?
Yeah, sometimes it's about getting out their way.
Yeah.
And coaching, isn't it?
So one of the ones I saw, I'm going to just check.
So for me...
don't worry, I'm already here.
You take over.
All right, just one of the thoughts, I've seen this online already, is A passes to B, who's hiding behind, it was a dummy or whatever, but the idea is player posts out on the back forehand, gives it back, goes the other side, receives it on a reverse trap and gets a shot. I've done a little bit of that this week, and it's been really, really good, but let them decide which way it's going to go and don't have to put it in the middle of the goal. So, for example, could be that you start on the angle here, and if it's with cones, they get a rebound. So if they hit the cones from passing, they get a lifted ball, they have to trap it. They might post out this side first, give it back, go that side, then hit on the angle. You could do it over distance. So actually the person passing and leading now has to trap under a bit more pressure just to look at that technique. You can get the feeder to actually have throwing the ball on the bounce, throwing the ball in an aerial, allow the trapper. So then you get this movement just by having a set of cones or whatever. They have to lead either side of it and move and receive, and you get that variance that Will was talking about. And then to take that a step further, I've sort of toyed around with having a group of three, and there's a few videos on there already I put up, where they're just transferring the ball, and then the person in the circle might be behind cones, might not, and then they can just deliver a ball in for that player to pick it, trap it and shoot, or deflect it, or lead. And that way they're still all over distance, and they're trying to actually work on a bit of technical without it being dull and boring and without any repetition. Not repetition, without any variance. You're muted, Will.
Good, because I sounded really unenthusiastic then.
You've got 11 minutes left.
Okay, right. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking, like, what are the restrictions? The restrictions, you're allowed 6, aren't you? So a game with 6 players where they have to maintain social distance, for me, could be something like this. Little pitch to start off with. All you have to do is get the ball past the opposition, so it has to enter there. It doesn't have to be trapped there. Once you've done that, then you lose a player. They come into there. This team is trying to do that. And then what we end up having is this kind of an intercept-based game where they have to play from there to be received into there. And if they do that, they get a player. And the idea being, once you've got down to that, you then start, first to 3 once you're in that
I just drew exactly the same almost, but in a dumber version. So 4 against 2 in the middle channels. The middle channel to separate them, you might even need to put in a separation of 2 meters on these lines. But the idea being these guys have got to try and connect with those guys, and you have 2 people trying to intercept in the middle would be a good one.
Yeah. We could play my favourite game, or one of my favourite games. Everything's my favourite game, isn't it? Which is slightly more difficult, just in terms of spaces. So normally I would do this with trying to hit over distance.
Is this the goal game or the other name?
What?
The goal game or the other name that we use for this game?
No, it's not that game.
Oh, you can do that.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. So it would be, let's say 3 versus 3, because that's our limitation, and you're playing in a pitch. These blocks can go up, and you set the rule of maybe 5 meters distance, because that's a good distance for players to start to understand, particularly at a young age. And the idea is this team has to get the ball over the end line, but when that ball is played forward, everyone on their team has to be behind the ball. This team are trying to stop it and then play it back over that line. So what you start to get is some pressing shapes occur, thinking about layers for intercepts, obviously maintaining 5 meter distance, but it's quite high energy, and you can vary the rules. So you could say, right, well, one person traps it, gets out of the way, the next person can step up and play it. And what that does is just gives these time a little bit more time to set, to make it more difficult. And then you could start to say, well, actually, all 3 of you players have to touch the ball. So once it's been trapped and the next person steps up to hit, they might play it laterally to space, and then they play it forward. So you can never pass the ball forwards, but the ball is directed forward to score. And it's basically playing the ball to space and thinking about getting depth.
And what you've said there, you could set that up with 3 layered players like that, for example. And then they're allowed to obviously move left to right. But these players can then work between it. They could obviously be in a triangle, whatever they want. And it might be that they're trying to hit the end line, etc. And that might be another way to set it up. But from a safety point of view, if you're worried about them being too close. And then to add to what Will said there, just having them smash a ball end to end might sound a bit silly, but if you actually do a little bit of target hitting with them, so I know you've got side goals, for example, if you just had a player and a D, and they're trying to score in the opposite person's goal, and if they're not able enough to be safe with it, you obviously let them shoot in your goal, but you do some target hitting. One team could put out some cones and some targets and make it like a battleship game where this player then has to try and hit their battleships and sink that. I know that John Bell's a massive fan of hitting ladders where they have target hitting practice, where they have to hit a Coke can or things like that, just to try and get them to try and get reps in. It was a bit more fun over distance.
Yeah, I mean, with that, when I start to introduce playing the ball over distance, so we talk quite young groups. If you've got an Astro, 6 kids, really easy to make it socially distanced, is you play golf. So let's say we've got our pitch, and we might say, right, the target is something in this corner over here, and we're starting there. And everyone's starting there with a ball, making sure they're the appropriate distance away from each other. And it's the number of goes it takes you to actually get it into that target. So if someone tonks it and goes straight in over distance, fair play to them. And you'll start to see a bit of risk and reward, but also that shaping of accuracy for it. So that's quite fun. And what you do is the person who gets the lowest score then picks where we go next.
Yeah. I've done that one on Twitter already, which is we basically had 2 people in the box, 4 people around the outside, so I was one of them, and it's about keeping the ball moving, so that we had 2 balls going at once, and basically it was unopposed. Ball goes in, player has to then pass to someone that doesn't have anyone doesn't have a ball. And I think we got up to 3 balls at one time going. So it's really just trap pass, vision, eyes up, and it's a bit rondo-y. You could add in a defender if you wanted to tweak the shape to have someone in the middle, someone on the outside of that. And then what we did do is, because I had sort of a back four, had a group in that was quite, we started to look at our outletting. So we started to just go over distance with a back four in and 2 screens. And again, we just had 2 balls in. And by actually these guys just trying to think about where they're playing and moving, it was quite static in an outletting thing, but it's just getting 2 balls going around at once was really good fun. And I think if you think about rondos and you did it over a bit of a distance, you could extend all of this because you've got low numbers, big space. If you had people in a box, obviously they can't be within it, but you could have someone inside another box on the outside of their box, and then you could have people that are then passing and trying to get the ball in over distance. And I really think over distance is a really good thing for first touch and for pressure receipts, which would be a good idea. We're on 5 minutes now, Will.
Yeah. So nice, easy one, and I like the idea of using multiple balls. I'm a particular fan, if you just to add a bit of cognition to something that could be very technical and basic, would be to have different rules for different balls. So I've got 4 people here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, maintaining a nice distance.
You've frozen.
Tab is you always go to the spare player. So ball into that person, then it's straight back to that one. Then the next ball comes back to the spare person. Next ball comes back to the spare person. I'd have this dynamic. So I'd have you receive going backwards and forwards. So keep a rule like the balls aren't allowed to be stationary. That just speeds it up a little bit as well. So as I receive in here, I'm taking it back as that one's traveling to then play on the move. And the thing about the different balls, make them different colours and have different rules. So, and this will make it much more difficult. So this ball, for example, is got to be flat. This ball could be bobbly or can't hit the floor. And just vary it like that. One might be backhand trap, forehand pass. One might be forehand trap, backhand pass. Just vary it up so that there's cognition going on and it makes it more difficult. So that would be one for me.
We did it yesterday. I'm just trying to send it. It's on the school Twitter, on the Taunton School Twitter, actually. They, the girls were just, I was going to try and show the video, but you can look at it. The girls were just playing between them with the person in the D. And the idea was they're playing and leading, and then you can look at a bit of outletting space. Or actually, I've got it here, I think. Yeah, I'll share my screen now. So you can just see the girls here playing between them and trying to get across in the circle. They're moving the ball from side to side. It was a bit more dynamic, but you can tell it's pretty wet. And then they're trying to practice some skills of delivery. So it was about, can they deliver the ball into the circle on the forehand, on the backhand? Can they hit it? Can they travel? But the thing that I really like is you could make that a back four in here and actually have it as a proper outlet towards someone in the circle. But the key thing for me is this communication between this player and these guys. So when she wants the ball delivered, as the ball is being passed, she can be calling or he can be calling for it. Oh, sorry. As the ball is being delivered, he can be leading and calling for the right space where he's going to then deflect it and be in the right body shape. And these guys have to then have that pre-vision and pre-scanning forwards before they deliver the ball. So it's just, again, trying to do some technical over-distance hitting, snapping, moving the ball without it being too boring.
Yeah, very simple. Probably people in netball do this sort of stuff. I know you love netball, Elliot.
2 minute warning. 2 minute warning.
So we're looking at a little bit of movement and complementary movement in the circle, and some goal scoring. Again, using this idea of different ball colours equals different rules. So what we might do is have 2 players here transferring, bang, 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 bang. And then every time the ball is received, these 2 in the D that have a grid that they're working with have to move to a new one but can't move to the same one. So you might get this sort of stuff happen, you might get that sort of stuff happen. Doesn't matter really, it's just looking at complementary movement and asking them to think about what the different complementary movements will allow in terms of the delivery. So yeah, say maybe these guys have to pass it 3 times and then it's delivered, bang, and we play maximum 2 touch in the circle.
Wonder if you could
So
do a
that,
similar version like that, ball carrying. So when the X is carrying, this player comes in the channel, they have to change channel, but they have to stay 2 meters apart, and then when they get to the D, they can shoot.
possibly. I mean, the only other thing I was going to say in this is, again, like that, different coloured ball, different rules. So it could be that the black one has to be a backhand hit. And how does that mean that they have to move to receive? So, and then just probe with the questioning around, right, well, why would you be choosing to try and receive to allow a backhand shot? What would your cues be in your environment? So you're looking at different space. It could be that actually you can't shoot in the box that you receive it in as well. So you might have that sort of stuff happening, and then does that guy also move to allow a deflection? So there's loads of stuff you can play around in there that's nice and simple.
And then in terms of the technical shaping stuff, if you think about what you're doing in your one-to-one sessions or what you have done, you can then just add variability. So rather than just have A pass to B, B shoots, or whatever it might be, chuck a bobble in there, chuck a squeeze pass, put a condition on the fact that it's going to be a backhand hit, backspace hit, first time finish, all those sorts of things. Timer wheel, done.
Yeah. The only other thing I'd just say is, we talk all the time, don't we, about know the situation of the players you've got, blah, 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 blah. Think about how you can use the regulations to your advantage. So if you have a couple of siblings that turn up from the same household and another couple of siblings that you have turn up from the same household, how you might be able to use a little bit of opposition within your activities without breaking those social distancing regulations. So again, it just comes back down to knowing what the players are and knowing what their constraints are, and then working around that.
And in the bigger picture, you can do a lot of stuff. You can train as normal, bar tackling and marking effectively. You can do lots of different things apart from the gameplay element. So all the stuff you would usually do, maybe outside of that, you can still incorporate. Think about the bigger tactics. Think about how you do interceptions, how you're outletting, all those sorts of things. That can all come into it. PCA, PCD skills are really good over distance. And as Will said at the start, I think it's key is don't get in their way. I actually text Will yesterday to say I'm on a pitch at the minute, and I actually told him I'm on a very wet pitch at the minute, but just allowing, I had two lads who literally for like 45 minutes were just going at it, practicing technically and just repeating because they were just loving it and they were in the moment. So I just tried to stay out their way and just chuck in little cues for them. So allow the player to dictate the learning is what I would say from my point of view.
Yeah, and I just think because you can't be properly physically contesting everything doesn't mean you have to strip away decision making and work out how you can create opportunities for players to be cognitively challenged and stimulated and make decisions based on what they're seeing, and keep using those questioning skills to try and build the context of your session so that we are developing skill and not just technique. That would be the big one.
I'd agree.
It's possible, isn't it?
And that's where I think you can use the players as a stimulus rather than necessarily just cones. Dribble around cones is fine if that's all you've got. But if you've got extra players, try and think how you can allow a player to add a decision-making opportunity for a player, and how you can, if players are interacting, passing the ball, that's better than a player on their own hitting a goal sort of thing. It adds variability, it adds different connections, it adds pre-scanning, it adds all those sorts of things.
I've got to go. Someone's at the door.
That worked out quite well. Thanks, Will. Bye.
It's been emotional.